Norridgewock Falls. These are the drops where Arnold's men arrived on October 4th, 1775, in their ill-fated attempt to take Quebec. Now we have to remember, Quebec, Canada, was part of the English Empire, as we were at that point. What you see behind you in these rapids, this is the point, right, where Arnold's men could go no further in their bateau. And they have even started a portage before this point. A very, very difficult stretch of water. The Native Americans carried the canoes around it, as would have Arnold's men in 1775. So we know that Arnold had to portage around Norridgewock Falls. 1.6 kilometers is almost a mile. It's 0.994 miles. So this probably wasn't the takeout site, but it would have been pretty close. Now here's one of the reasons we know why. Arnold recorded in his journals that he paddled over to the old site of Old Point, where Father Rawl had been killed in 1724, and dug for arrowheads. He recorded that in his journal. So if I kind of pan, so here we are, we're on the Stark side, right? Across the river right there, you see that notch in the trees, like right here. That's the power lines that basically pass right through the Old Point site. So we know right here where we're at is where Arnold's men stood at some point as they prepared to pass Norridgewock Falls. Okay, so I want you to look real closely right here. We're in the spot where Arnold and his men may well have left the river system, but also as an area used by Native Americans. Pointing to it right here. I'm going to bring it up close to the camera here for a second. See that orange rind on that rock, and it's cracked. Fire-cracked rock. Some point there was a fire pit here. Some point that rock split because of it. Might have been Benedict Arnold's men. We don't know, but if this rock could tell stories, I'd love to hear them. So here's another cool little find here on the banks of the Kennebec. I'm going to zoom in right there. I'm just going to leave that piece laying right there. Clay pottery. I'm going to grab it in a second, hold it up, and I'm going to put it right back where I found it. Zoom out. That right there, folks. Fired clay pottery. How cool. Let's leave it right there. Right where it belongs. So as Arnold's men began to work their way up the Kennebec, one of the problems that they ran into was that a lot of the food they had brought with them began to go bad, right? So, science lesson for my students here. Your body needs proteins, fats, and carbohydrates. So protein was easy to moose here, or deer here, like geese, ducks. They shot those animals. We know that from Arnold's records that their men did eat moose. They lived on a fairly protein-rich diet. The problem was a lot of the casks of the rice and the peas and things like that that were the necessary sugars got ruined by the weather. They got wet, they leaked, and therefore they lost a lot of the carbohydrates necessary. Your body runs, that's the fuel for your body, right? So Arnold's men had protein. People oftentimes ask, like, how did they not survive in the wilderness where there's so much game? Well, they were out of sugar. They didn't know how to get the sugars from the environment. So one of the things that they talked about was that one of the Native American guides that was with them would use his knife and he would cut the fir tree on the blisters on a fir tree. I'm going to show you what that looks like here at some point. So, he would eat the sap from the fir trees off his knife blade. So I'm assuming, and again, I don't know, I'm not a scientist, I'm assuming it contains sugar in some form. So it allowed the natives to have a sugar source in difficult times. There's Abenaki Hydro behind us. So that channel that you see come out of that dam is probably a redirected channel. If I turn and look this way, we're going to walk up there in a second. That there looks like the original channel of the Kennebec River. And my guess is when they refer to Norridgewock Falls, where we're standing right now, probably would have been inundated. So this was the stretch of the river system where Arnold had to get around it. Look over here, the side of him, there's just cliffs and banks, right? So rugged terrain. So Arnold's men were definitely portaging around this spot by October 4th when he first arrived here. So again, gives you an idea of the difficulty of the terrain that was going to get worse as they got further inland toward the Great Carrying Place and then the height of land on the way into Canada. Very difficult area. Here you see behind me, over here, that's the original course of the Kennebec River in the original location of Norridgewock. There you can see behind me two cool things. There you can see behind me two cool things on the Kennebec up here in Madison. First off, probably the original channel of the falls on the left-hand side. We're going to get a real close look here in a second. And also there's a cement log chute. You have to remember this place was also used for logging, right? So that would have been where they ran the logs down through to keep them from jamming up on the fall. If you look, that there would have been very close to the falls that Arnold saw when he was here in 1775. There behind me, you can see that's probably the original channel of Norridgewock Falls, right? So, not only was it an impediment to Arnold's movement upstream and a necessary portage, also, that represents the upstream limit of alewives, shad, and herring in the Kennebec River system. That is as far as they went. All those fish would have turned off, laid their eggs below this point and turned off into the Sandy. But they would not have been able to pass that. The Atlantic salmon are the only fish that really could have passed this point here in Norridgewock. That is the original Norridgewock Falls. I know some of it is much smaller version of what we're looking at. You can see this in cement here. So, yeah, probably the next one.